Hello students. Today we will be talking about the poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, by Dylan Thomas. The poem is a little challenging, but do not worry. I will explain everything in simple words, step by step, so you can understand it completely. This video covers explanation and analysis of the poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. First, let us talk about the poet. Dylan Thomas was a Welsh poet born in 1914. He wrote many poems and is known for his powerful and emotional style of writing. One of his most famous poems is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, which he wrote for his father. His father was very sick and close to death when Dylan Thomas wrote this poem. The poet was very sad but also wanted to encourage his father to fight against death. Now let us discuss the title, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. The phrase, that good night, is a metaphor. A metaphor is when one thing is used to represent something else. In this case, that good night represents death. The poet is saying that people should not accept death calmly or quietly. Instead, they should resist it and fight against it. Explanation of Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. Let us go through the poem stanza by stanza and explain every word and idea. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. In this stanza, the poet is giving advice. He is telling older people not to accept death peacefully. The phrase close of day is another metaphor. It represents the end of life, just as night comes after day. The words burn and rave mean to be full of energy and to express strong feelings. The poet is saying that even when someone is old, they should stay passionate and fight against death. The word rage means to fight with strong anger. By repeating rage against the dying of the light, the poet emphasizes how important it is to fight against death. The dying of the light is another metaphor for death. Though wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning they do not go gentle into that good night. In this stanza, the poet talks about wise men. Wise men are people who have knowledge and understanding. The phrase a dark is right means death is natural and unavoidable. Even though these wise men know that a dark is right, they do not accept death quietly. They know that death is certain, yet they resist it. The phrase, forked no lightning, is a metaphor. It means that their ideas and teachings did not create a powerful or lasting effect, like lightning does in the sky. Because of this, they fight against death instead of accepting it. Good men, the last wave by crying how bright. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage against the dying of the light. In this stanza, the poet talks about good men. These are people who have lived morally upright lives and have done good deeds. The phrase, the last wave by, suggests that they are nearing the end of their lives, much like the last wave approaches the shore. They cry out because they realize that their good actions, which the poet calls frail deeds, did not have as much of a lasting impact as they had hoped. The image, danced in a green bay, symbolizes a lively and beautiful place, possibly representing life or nature. Even though these good men have lived meaningful lives, they still regret not having made a stronger impression. Therefore, they also rage against the dying of the light, refusing to accept death without a fight. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. And learn, too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. In this stanza, the poet talks about wild men. These are adventurous and passionate people who live life to the fullest. The phrase, caught and sang the sun in flight, is a metaphor. It means that these wild men enjoyed life while it was happening, much like trying to capture the sun as it moves across the sky. However, they later realize that time has passed, and they have lost many opportunities. The phrase, grieved it on its way, suggests that they regret the passage of time and the approach of death. Even though they come to this realization too late, they do not accept death peacefully. Instead, they continue to fight against it. They refuse to give up without a struggle. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage against the dying of the light. In this stanza, the poet focuses on grave men. These men are serious or thoughtful individuals nearing the end of their lives. The phrase, near death, who see with blinding sight, means that these men gain a deep and sudden understanding about life as they approach death. The term blinding sight suggests that this new understanding is intense and overwhelming. It possibly refers to a spiritual or emotional awakening. The poet uses the metaphor, blind eyes could blaze like meteors, to describe how even those who are physically weak or visually impaired can still show immense inner strength and passion. The blazing meteors symbolize something bright, fierce, and unstoppable. Despite being close to death, these grave men remain hopeful and joyful, be gay, and continue to fight against death, refusing to go quietly. And you, my father, there on the sad height. Curse, bless, me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. In this stanza, the poet directly addresses his father. The phrase, on the sad height, is a metaphor that suggests his father is on the brink of death, standing at the edge between life and death. The poet asks his father to show strong emotions, whether it is through cursing or blessing him. The words of fierce tears emphasize that even tears can be a powerful expression of resistance against death. By saying, curse, bless, me now, the poet is asking for any emotional response from his father, as long as it shows that he is still fighting against death. The stanza ends with the repeated lines, do not go gentle into that good night, and rage, rage against the dying of the light. It reinforces the central message of the poem. The poet suggests to resist death with all strength and passion. Analysis of, do not go gentle into that good night. Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night is a powerful and emotional poem about the human response to death. Through this poem, Dylan Thomas explores the theme of resistance in the face of mortality. The poet encourages people, especially his father, to fight against death rather than accepting it passively. By using strong and vivid language, the poet conveys his message passionately. One of the most important features of this poem is its structure. The poem is a villanelle, which is a 19-line form with a strict pattern of repetition and rhyme. Villanelles have 5 3-line stanzas followed by a final 4-line stanza. The repeated lines, do not go gentle into that good night, and rage, rage against the dying of the light, give the poem a rhythmic and emphatic tone, reinforcing the poet's urgent message. The poem uses various types of imagery and figurative language to convey its themes. For example, metaphors like that good night for death and the dying of the light for the end of life add depth to the poet's ideas. The use of imagery, such as "it blaze like meteors" and "forked no lightning," creates vivid pictures in the reader's mind and emphasizes the importance of living passionately and meaningfully. The poet's choice of words is significant. Verbs like spurn, rave, and rage are strong and aggressive. These words highlight the intense emotions the poet wants people to feel when facing death. The repetition of rage, rage against the dying of the light, throughout the poem underscores the urgency of this message. Another key element of the poem is its exploration of different types of people and how they respond to death. The poet mentions wise men, good men, wild men, and grave men. The poem shows that regardless of their personalities or life experiences, they all resist death in their own ways. The emotional climax of the poem occurs in the final stanza when the poet addresses his father directly. This personal plea adds a deep emotional layer to the poem and makes it clear that the poet's message is not just a general observation but also a heartfelt request to his own father. In conclusion, Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night is a powerful poem by Dylan Thomas that urges people to live with passion and resist death with all their strength. Through its vivid imagery, strong language, and emotional appeal, Dylan Thomas delivers a timeless message about the importance of fighting against the inevitable and making the most of life.